We will send out a link afterwards to everyone who signed up, and we'll make the recording publicly available. And I think with that, I will turn it over to Chris.
Thank you so much, Christine, and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on Windows 10. And today we're going to talk a lot about the features and functions, but also the reasons to migrate and the overall changes that Windows 10 is going to bring to our landscape as we move forward over the next few months and the changes within inside of Microsoft. So we're going to do about 30 minutes of content, and then we got about 10-15 minutes reserved at the end for Q&A. So definitely keep those questions coming and keep it as interactive as you'd like. So as we think about our modern landscape and we think about where we are today, we've got all these different devices. In fact, I just did a lunch and learn earlier today talking about Windows 10 and Office 2016, and I had fun challenging the room, saying, well, how many people in the room have one device? How many have two? How many have three, four? And we couldn't stop until we got to 9. There was a person in the room who had 9 different personal devices between tablets, laptops, desktops, phones, etc. So when we think about this plethora of different devices, we think about how are we going to manage all of this? How do we manage the information? How do we manage the security, the mobility for our different modalities that we have? And what are the tools Microsoft's putting in place in order for us to do that? So that's really the crux of Windows 10, is giving IT those tools they need to empower people to be more mobile, to be more productive, and for us to be able to secure that environment. Because
Chris, I think we are losing audio. Hang on one sec while we get that back up.
sorry about that, everybody. Lost my internet connection for a moment there. That's what I get for working from a. All right. So as I was saying, mobility and security are the key, right? Connecting that mobile environment, and I'm a big statistics fan. So when we think about some of these statistics, when we think about some of these various applications that we have to do, most people send their content or send their first send before they ever walk into the office. There we go. There, now I have control of it. Sorry, I couldn't advance the slide there. I wasn't the presenter for a second. There we go. So when we think about some of these statistics that we have, 56% of people send their first email before they even arrive at the office, or they send, 70-80% of us send email after we've left the office. When we think about all these BYOD devices, right? We think about how we're going to secure these various environments. One of my other big statistical ones I love are, 37% of people work from 3 or more locations in a given day or time. And the bigger one comes in this next slide, which is this last one here. 15% of employees are accessing data from mobile, remote, or BYOD style devices. So when we think about combining that statistic with the rest of our information, right, it's securing, it's getting people access to that data securely regardless of where they are. So when we think about it, traditionally our mobile tapestry, we have secured our applications. We have secured the devices, but ultimately what we want to move towards is securing the user. If we can secure the user, then we secure them regardless of what they're accessing. Whether it's on a certain device or a certain application or a certain set of data, it doesn't matter because we are securing that user. So we start applying GPOs, we start applying those policies and controls to the user object in Active Directory, not the computer object. So regardless of the device they log into, it follows them. So what are people telling us? The biggest ones from here, passwords are no longer sufficient, that simply a username and password doesn't work for most people. Do more with less, all of this, I think, however, boils down to something called the cost-benefit analysis, right? Business 101, if you ever took a business class in college, right? The cost-benefit analysis. What is the cost of us doing this? What are the different challenges we're going to hit as an organization, and then what do those things present to us as an organization? How do we master those things? So again, when we think about taking all of those problems we just laid out, we want to create more personal computing. We want to do that by giving users a standard set of interactions, a standard UI across all their devices. We want to enable mobility, and we want to do Windows as a service, right? So when we think about that Windows as a service, what are we really talking about there? And when I'm doing individual consulting gigs for an organization, usually my challenge is, why are you running Windows? If I actually ask you that question, why are you running Windows? Could you answer it? And the answer from most organizations on why they're running Windows is simply that it runs their line of business apps. When we boil it down, it runs your line of business apps. Because it runs your line of business apps, because it runs those things you need to do to be productive, that's why you run Windows. If someone else showed up tomorrow with a new OS that was half the cost of Windows, but did everything, was every bit as secure, and ran all of your line of business apps, you would drop Windows in a heartbeat, right? And that makes sense because Windows in and of itself doesn't do anything for you. It's the apps it runs from a user perspective. From an IT perspective, Windows does tons for us because it lets me secure the environment, lets me control the environment, it lets me manage how people are accessing things. But from a user perspective, Windows is rather irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. So when we move to this idea of Windows as a service, it's moving to this idea of, let me provide a stable, consistent platform with which I can develop and deploy applications to users. I call it the iOS effect or the Xbox effect. Anybody on the call who has an Xbox? Every so often, every month or so, an update comes out for the software on the Xbox, and when you boot up your Xbox or you boot up your iOS device, it says you have an update. You click on the button, it installs the update. Now, you don't have to reinstall any of your applications. You don't have to reconfigure anything. It just installs and updates. And 10, 20, 30 minutes later, depending on the size of the update, you have access to your system, and all your settings are still there, and all your information is still there. And that's the key. That's where we're trying to move the Windows desktop-based experience. We're used to this world on our mobile phones, on our tablets, on our gaming devices. But the desktop environment is the one spot where we're not used to this. And that's where we need to bring it to, because that's what's going to enable us to be more flexible and mobile as a company. So when we think about this converged in platform, right? It's about having that unified experience, whether you're on a phone, a tablet, a desktop, or an Xbox, right? They're all running that Windows 10 core code so that my application is portable across the various devices so that I can utilize whatever device I need in order to gain the information or gain access to the information I need as a user to get my job done. Because again, Windows is, nothing but the conduit to get me to that data. So when I think about that, what do we need to innovate on? What are those challenges? And really there's 4 key pillars, right? Protecting against threats. How do we stay innovative? How do we get people to be more productive? And how do we give some device options and give options to the user base? So let's tackle each one of these in turn. So when we think about the continuous innovation, right, we're going to think about how we're going to keep it up to date. When I say innovative tech companies, to most people, a lot of companies come to mind. Unfortunately, Microsoft is not one of them. Microsoft spends more money on R&D, though, than just about any other company. Microsoft spends so much money on and time and energy and resources on developing new products, new platforms, new features. The problem is the deployment of those. How many of you on the call today are running a version, Office 2010 or Office 2007, or are still running Windows 7, right? Windows 7 is end of life. Windows 7 is, 7 years old at this point. It's an old, outdated OS at this point, right? There were 3 versions beyond it, between 8, 8.1, and now 10. So when you think about that, of course people don't think it's innovative. They're still running Windows 7 with Office 2010, or running Exchange 2010 or Exchange 2007, or, and then they're comparing it to these other applications which are cloud-based, continuously updated, or their iOS device. I had a great analogy earlier today when I was talking with a customer, in that if I handed you a StarTAC flip phone and said, go ahead and use that as your phone, you'd look at me like I had 3 heads. But 7 years ago, that was a very viable phone, right? Flip phones were still a big thing. Yeah, the smartphones were out, but they were still not everyone had one, right? But now, no one, if I said, here's an iOS 1 device, would anybody on this call take it? Of course not, right? But yet you're willing to use an OS that's that old. And I understand why. The key is, it's again that cost-benefit analysis. To upgrade Windows 7 to Windows 8 was a 100-hour, 200-hour, 300-hour project, depending on the size of your organization. And the perceived benefit wasn't enough to overset the cost and energy needed to do that upgrade. Whereas if we can take that and instead change that to be like your iOS device, where it's a click of a button, you walk away for 20 minutes and your OS is upgraded, and you don't have to reinstall your applications, you don't have to reconfigure. We're giving you these management choices of doing MDM-like support. If we think of the mobile device management, Intune, or if you're using some third-party one like, AirWatch or Mobile Iron, right? We've been managing our mobile devices on this mindset for a very long time. Why aren't we managing our mobile PC devices the exact same way? Doing partial wipes, pushing out applications, managing it all centrally so that we have that consistency of our IT management. And that's the key. When we get consistency, we get reduction in cost. When we get consistency, we get reduction in complexity. We get ease of management and ease of use. So then when we think about that deployment reimagined, now we're really getting into how we're doing it. And if you haven't done a Windows 10 upgrade on this call yet today, there's your homework assignment. Everybody go out and find a machine and do a Windows 10 upgrade from Windows 7 or Windows 8 or 8.1 and migrate directly to 10. So I've been teaching the A+, the N+, and the MCDST classes for quite some time, about 13 years now. And, back when teaching the 98 certification or the, XP certification, the first thing you taught people was how to do an in-place upgrade. how to put the CD in and do that upgrade. And then the second thing you taught them was, if I ever catch you doing this in the real world, I'll break both your thumbs, because we don't do in-place upgrades. We re-image the machine. We don't want to carry through the problems from the previous machine, and half the things won't work right. So just re-image. That is no longer a true statement. And I say that as someone who has taught that for 13 years. It is no longer a true statement. In-place upgrades actually work now. They work fantastic. They work. I have not had a single application compatibility issue in any upgrade I've done to date. Now, I take that as a challenge, because some customer somewhere, I'm certain, will find the application that's going to give me a hard time, but I've yet to find one in the hundreds of upgrades I've done. So when we think about how to do that in-place upgrades, again, getting away from imaging, the nirvana we want to get to is that any employee should be able to walk into a Best Buy, buy a computer off the shelf, start using it, and be able to securely gain access to their data. Because again, if they register that they're using the device using the company portal application, so before they can get access to company resources, they've got to register that they're using it. So they log in through the company portal application. Through that, all of your GPOs, all of your security, all of your compliance is pushed out to the device, because the user has said, well, I'm going to use this device. So now you can give them access to corporate resources. You can give them access to the applications they need, because you're securing the device. You're securing that environment. So now you give them access to the corporate data they need, and they're up and running. In theory, I could grab any machine and I can be up and running inside of minutes, because all my stuff is in the cloud and I'm utilizing Windows 10. So this all reduces the energy, time, and cost of doing that OS migration. So then the big piece becomes identity management in that. And, passwords just aren't good enough anymore. So how do we do it? So we want to offer things like Azure Active Directory and its native integration into Windows 10 for doing things like multi-factor authentication, allowing users to use more than just a password for authenticating to their device. Using something, phone factor, which the company Microsoft bought years ago now, using the phone as an RSA token or as an extra authentication tool. Or doing with Windows 10 now, doing facial recognition using an onboard camera for login. And the algorithm in Windows 10 for facial recognition is so advanced, it can actually identify the differences between identical twins and do authentication separately for identical twins. And if you haven't seen the video of that, definitely go onto the Microsoft YouTube channel and look for the Ignite videos. They showed all sorts of great Windows 10 features. This was one of them, the facial recognition login. So really taking advantage of that identity management and how you're doing identity management, because again, the user object is the most important thing. And then giving you as an organization the ability to manage how you run your own store, you're proxying things from the Windows Store, or you're publishing your own applications for self-download that can do things like license reclaim and reuse, that can do things like helping you do chargebacks to departments. Hey, how many people are using Project? Who has gone in to the company portal and downloaded Project? And therefore I need to charge back their department to make sure we're getting the capturing the costs to that department for the use of Project. And now here's the big one, managed for continuous innovation. So when we think about our continuous innovation, we are thinking about the release cycle. So Windows 10 is the last OS Microsoft intends to release for quite some time, because how they intend to update it is on this sort of rolling cycle. So when we think about Patch Tuesday, just like iOS devices, we'll be getting that continuous update. We'll be getting that reliable update cycle of, okay, there's a new build of Windows for my organization. I can test it just like I can any other patch that I get. I can test it, put it on a test box, get ready, and then roll it out. Now the difference here is, and the part that is more stunning to people and more of a shock to maybe your processes today, is the fact that your the release cycle, we're not talking in the terms of years, we're talking in the terms of months. So there'll be a new build every few months. The same is true for Office 2016, right? A new version of Office 2016 is going to be released every 4 months, right? So it's going to be on this continual upgrade cycle, and they're only going to support a few versions back. They're not going to be supporting these builds for 10 years. So if you're not staying up to date, if you are falling 3 or 4 versions behind, you're not going to be getting security patches. You're going to fall out of compliance. So this is going to force companies to stay up to date, stay more up to date. Now, for corporate organizations, you'll have up to a year before they stop supporting previous builds. So for organizations who are buying their Windows licenses through their enterprise agreement and are on the Pro and Enterprise versions, they'll have the ability to delay those updates up to a year for testing. For organizations or consumers who are using the regular old free version, if you will, of Windows 10, you cannot delay the updates. They're just going to come. So this is really the reasons for corporations to be on the enterprise versions of the applications, so that you have the ability to control when those updates are coming and when they're happening. So how can we make users more productive? But we give them a familiar UI, right? I often ask people, how do they feel about Windows 8? And, a lot of people have mixed reviews on Windows 8. And the reason is thus. If you didn't have a touch screen, Windows 8 didn't really offer you much. Windows 8 was Windows 7 look and feel from the desktop standpoint, with a new start menu that was really touch-centric. And all of the wonderful gestures and the swipe in and swipe left and zoom in. Again, if you didn't have a touch screen, none of that was really overly useful to you. It still had some use, but not as much. So when you think about, again, that cost-benefit analysis, the equation didn't work out, hence the mixed reviews. So with Windows 10, what we've done is it's now a tablet when you need it, a desktop when you want it. So if you have a keyboard and mouse plugged in, it will stay more in that Windows 7 look and feel. Now, in your start menu, you'll still have the smart tiles. You'll still have the ability to utilize the modern applications. But when you disconnect, if you have like a 2-in-1 device, like a Surface and the other 2-in-1 devices, and you disconnect the keyboard and mouse, it will prompt you and is going to ask, would you like to swap to tablet mode, which lets it move to a more full screen, modern UI, Windows 8 more look and feel. Again, tablet when you need it, desktop when you want it. So again, scales across the various workloads, depending on how you're utilizing it, depending on the application, all the way from the mobile phone, all the way through the desktop world. So when you get these universal applications like Office 2016, which is a universal application, you're going to get that same look and feel across the various devices. From a development standpoint, if you're doing your own custom app dev, you can write one program that will work across all your devices, right? So we're adding a lot of innovation here because, again, nobody's running Windows for Windows. You're running it for the app. So we're making a platform that is better suited to application development. So when we think about Office, making it more touch-centric, building in some of these tools so that it's more mobile, more touch-friendly, again, but is also keyboard and mouse-friendly when you're in that modality. So again, how you're using it as a user is going to let you determine how it's going to work for everyone. So the big keys here to come in things like Outlook, and I particularly want to call out Outlook when you think about that mobile experience. So we've added applications for the devices. On Windows 10, Outlook, the mail client functions like regular Outlook. But they've now also launched Outlook for the iOS device and Android. Why would they do that if those devices already had a mail client that worked with Exchange perfectly fine? It again goes back to that concept of one look and feel, one set of training. If I'm going to manage an application, let me push out Outlook to your device, manage that application, because then I know from a behavior standpoint, it's going to function the same if you're on your iPad, your desktop, or your laptop. If I give you a set of instructions, it should translate between the various versions or have only slight modifications depending on touch or non-touch. The other big consideration we have to have when we're considering our OS migration is the browser. So we have Microsoft Edge, but we still have the ability to have Internet Explorer. But I know there are all sorts of third-party applications that this one says this one works better in Mozilla, this one works better in Chrome, this one works better in IE7, this one works better in IE11. And this is probably the largest challenge we still have in OS migrations today. And it really has nothing to do with the OS migration itself as it does to do with managing the desktop environment. What browsers do I have to have? Now, Edge is hopefully, as it moves forward and matures, going to be able to handle a lot of these issues for us, in that it's built on Web 2.0 standards. It's built on a lot of open architecture, so that it should support and work with just about everything. As everybody moves towards these internet standards and Web 2.0 standards, HTML5 standards, it should make these applications streamline and work better. But people are still running out-of-date apps. People are still running third-party apps that are older. So this is probably the area where we spend the most time working with organizations. So this is going to let people be more productive, again, giving them that unified experience that they've been looking for. Give them the desktop when they need it, and give them the tablet when they want it. So when we think about that innovation, it's allowing people to have the device flexibility. I akin the iPhone a lot to the old Ford model, right? You can have any Ford a color you want as long as it's black, right? You can have any iPhone you want as long as it looks like every other iPhone of that model. And with Windows, we've got this breadth of devices. And we also have resources available. There are people outside of Microsoft who specialize in nothing but helping you pick out which devices, which form factors suit your needs. Do you need a tough device because you're running a construction company and people are going to have them on contract sites? Are you running a retail environment where maybe it's a high-end retail store and you want your sales employees to have tablets, but you want something nicer looking or smaller or sleeker or lighter based on the design and form factor of that environment? So there's a bunch of different devices, and there's more innovation happening every day. Yes, we have Surface tablets. Surface tablets are great. They're great devices. But even the Microsoft specialists who specialize in devices will tell you there are other form factors as well if that form factor doesn't suit your needs. So understanding the choices that you have to meet those various needs. So how are you going to get ready for Windows 10? Accelerate your migration to IE11, accelerate your migration off the old browsers. Let's take a look at these old browser applications, figure out what you can do, pilot it, try it. The upgrade process is very easy to go in and upgrade your system. Make sure you've got the profile and user management. Make sure your AD is clean. Make sure you've got people grouped together by good OUs so you can start pushing out policies based on the user object and not the computer object. Start adopting and changing how you're doing your Windows update and how you're managing your Windows updates. Make sure you have your testing policy down. This is key. Have your testing policy down. Have your testing methodology down so that you can be testing these builds. Part of that is joining the Insider program so that you can get access to the new builds and get access to the latest builds. So with that, I want to open it up to Q&A and see if there are any questions from the crowd.
I am going to take a look. I am not seeing anything in the chat window.
Okay. Well, hang around for a few minutes if anybody has any questions, but if not, again, definitely look to your browser applications. Let's start talking about what we can do there. Download it, do an upgrade. Take that as a homework assignment. Do an upgrade. Do the in-place upgrade yourself. Test that. Don't take my word for it. Try it out yourself. See that it works. See how easy it is. See how we can get away from the imaging. Get involved in the Insider program. Sign up for it so you can get on the latest builds and start testing them. and then reach out, and we're happy to come on site and help you kind of go through and start piling it out and planning out your deployment.
Thanks, Chris. This was super helpful. I actually upgraded
Welcome.
my Surface device from 8.1 to Windows 10, and I am by no means a technical person, and I was able to do it no problems in about 20 minutes. So I had a really fantastic experience myself.
So someone said, given that the question was, given that there are issues with the installation and sudden freezes with Windows 10, should I wait for later updates? And I'm not familiar with the issue you're talking about. I know there was one of the insider builds that had an issue, but it was an insider build. And the insider builds are the early releases, right? So you do not want your whole organization on the insider build program, because the insider build is the testing program for the release. And there's two ways when you're on an insider build. You can get them fast or slow. So if you're on the fast insider build, you get the build the day it drops. Before it's tested, you are the testing. Even for Microsoft, you are the insider testing. Whereas the slow builds, you get them a couple of weeks after they've been out and they potentially have been cleaned up a bit if there are issues. So the slow insider builds are a little more stable, a little better. So what I recommend, usually you should have a couple of test machines, maybe a couple of people on fast build, and then your real test environment should be on the slow build, and then everyone else should be on the full production build. But there are no known issues right now with sudden freezes with Windows 10 on the current full production build.
Hey Chris, thank you very much. So this is Asher. Yes, the issue was I had the insider build and the developer build. I had created a couple of VMs on my personal machine and deployed every single version that came out, and I skimmed through a lot of those. There were issues, but now I'm a bit hesitant to install it because now I'm at 8.1, and I think now it's time to go about it because, as you said, there are no any outstanding issues with that.
Right. Stay on. Yeah, if you're careful and you stay on the production builds, you shouldn't have any issues. It's only the insider builds that you can hit issues. But again, that's the whole point of the insider build. So from an IT perspective, I have two machines, primary machines, not VMs, but primary physical machines. I keep one on a production build for both Office and Windows, and I keep the other on the preview build, on the fast preview build, so I can test it the day it comes out, right? And that's my job as an IT professional, to make sure I'm aware of any potential issues that could come up, to see what's there, to make sure it's there. And again, it's the reason to be on the enterprise version, because you can then delay the updates even when it goes to production until you've fully tested it, met your SOX requirements, done your vetting, and then can do your full deployment.
Makes sense. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, guys, I don't see any more questions, so I'm